All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is Sean Rogers. I'm one of the product managers here at Zyxel North America. This is our monthly sort of new partner introduction. We've gotten feedback from people over the years that, they were surprised that we offered some products that they weren't familiar with, or just a lot of requests asking, for help selling and understanding the product. So we put this together as a way basically for those of you that are new to Zyxel, or those of you that are maybe only familiar with one or two of our product lines and would like to learn more about the others. We put this together for you to sort of provide a high level overview. I'm going to provide a quick little background, some information on Zyxel itself, since let's be honest, oftentimes when you're proposing Zyxel to your customers, they've never heard of us before. So I'll give you a little background on us, and then we'll hit all of the different products, give you some naming rules so you can understand what's there, and hit some of the high points that are available on those products. So we'll start with the background. So Zyxel Networks, we've been around for over 30 years. We got our start all the way back in 1989. We've been making computer networking products ever since. We've got over 100 million devices deployed out in the field. We serve 150 different global markets. Now, Zyxel is part of the family called Zyxel Group. So technically, I'm with what's called Zyxel Networks. And Zyxel Networks is focused at making networking products aimed at the business space. So VARs, MSPs, small businesses, medium businesses, products for them. So switches, access points, firewall products, etc. We have a sister company called Zyxel Communications, and they are focused on the ISP side of things. So they're the guys who make our VDSL2 modems or GPON products, stuff like that, that are aimed primarily at internet service providers. And then we've got a number of other sister companies. There's three others listed here. The only one I'll talk about briefly here is MitraStar. So MitraStar is our manufacturing arm. So they're the ones who do a lot of the manufacturing of our products for us, and they are also part of the Zyxel Group, which is publicly traded on the Taiwanese Stock Exchange. So Zyxel itself is based out of Taiwan. That is our headquarters. We are a Taiwanese company. Our US and Canadian office is based out of Anaheim, California. We have a dedicated Central American office. We have offices in Latin America. The biggest area for us, though, is Europe. We've been very big in Europe for a very long time. And this is just showing here that when it comes to R&D, 70% of our R&D is done at our main facility in Taiwan. So that's based out of Hsinchu, Taiwan. We've been there as long as I've been with the company, which is over 20 years. We've shifted, I think, buildings once or twice, but that's never left the city. We also do have R&D on mainland China, and we do have an R&D center in Germany that works on some of our stuff, particularly, I think, our security stuff. So just some other fun facts here. We have been recognized by S&P Global's Sustainability Yearbook as being one of the top 5% companies when it comes to sustainability. Something that a lot of other companies making networking equipment do not do. As you may or may not know, making computer networking equipment can be a very dirty process. So we're very proud of the fact that we were able to clean things up, source things from sustainable sources, etc. And then another thing we do is we partner with various other companies when it comes to offering additional services, particularly on our security appliances. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later when we get to the security products. So we're going to start by talking about Nebula. You're probably, if you've been with us a while, you're probably sick to death with hearing about it. I've got a few slides to talk about it here real quick for you. And the reason we're starting with Nebula is because Nebula these days is kind of the glue that connects all of our products together. So what is Nebula? Nebula was the first cloud management platform that was aimed at the SMB space and provided what we would call a full stack support for more than just one type of product. Back when we launched Nebula all the way back in 2016, it was pretty much either an enterprise solution for cloud networking or focused just on access points. So we decided to enter that space, and we've been improving Nebula ever since. We are the oldest SMB cloud solution that's out there. So the idea behind Nebula is to try to make things easier for you. So you need to buy less stuff, you need to spend less time on your installation, and you need to spend less time getting things up and running and configuring. So this slide here is just showing you sort of all of the stuff that goes into doing a new greenfield install. And the idea with Nebula here is to reduce a lot of that, either eliminate it entirely or reduce the amount of time or effort that goes into it. So you're saving money and you are saving time invested in setting up those new networks. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the features here on Nebula. So the idea here is hassle-free network management for you. Basically, with Nebula, all configuration is going to be done in the cloud. When you want to set up a new customer, you want to set up a new network, you want to make configuration changes, you simply go to nebula.zyxel.com, log in, and you will find all of your customers and all of their Zyxel networking equipment right there for you to be able to take care of. So one of the cool things that we can do with Nebula is we can start setting up your network without having to actually take your products out of the boxes. Most Nebula compatible hardware has a QR code on the outside of the box. You simply scan that with your mobile phone and then assign that device to a customer and to a site. And from that point on, you can configure that device. You don't have to do anything locally on the device itself. Once you are ready to deploy the network or the hardware, once you plug it in, it simply checks with the cloud, sees you want to manage it in the cloud, and will automatically download its config from the cloud. Nothing you have to do to the hardware itself. You don't have to put it in cloud mode. You don't have to point it at a server somewhere. It just works. So Nebula, when setting up a new network, has got a number of different wizards and tools to make it easier for you to get a network up and running in just a short period of time. And the idea behind Nebula is basically anywhere you have access to a web browser and an internet connection, you have access to your customers. So it frees you up from needing to go on site. So it reduces the number of site visits you have to do, and it allows you to quickly respond to things if a customer has an issue, or allows you to take a more proactive approach to monitoring your customer's network and solving issues before they complain. So to use Nebula, you just need to buy Zyxel equipment that supports Nebula. There's no additional hardware or software required. There's no virtual machines that need to be set up. There's no servers that need to be configured. There's no cloud keys, none of that. The Nebula agent is built into the hardware itself. So, and with Nebula, as I was mentioning before, there are a number of tools out there that make it easier for you to set up a new network. If you are using some of our optional license features, we have the ability to, back up and restore switch configurations to the cloud, clone switches when deploying new switches, so you can just clone the settings on an existing set to a new one, the ability to clone customer sites and clone organizations between customers, the use of templates, all sorts of nice little tools there to help speed things up and make things easier for you. So to use Nebula, you just need Nebula compatible hardware, but we don't force you to use Nebula. Nebula is an option for you. And to designate this, we call our products here Nebula Flex. So that's the term you're looking for. If a product supports Nebula, unless it's a really old product that's been sitting around, it's Nebula Flex, meaning it'll work in standalone traditional manage mode, where you would log into the device's GUI or use SSH or SNMP or whatever other tools you may traditionally have used, or you can manage that same device in the cloud, either or. It's really easy to do. If you want to manage the device in the cloud, you scan that QR code, assign the device to a customer and to a site, and the device will automatically put itself into cloud management mode. If at any point you decide you no longer want to use the cloud to manage that device, you simply log into Nebula, remove the device from the organization inventory, and the device will automatically reboot itself into standalone mode. So you're not locked into either or mode. We do have some products that we advertise as Nebula Flex Pro. So Nebula Flex Pro just means that that device comes with a 1-year professional pack license bundled with it. So professional pack is our most popular optional license when it comes to adding features into Nebula. And we'll talk a little bit about licenses here. We talk about more about it in our dedicated Nebula presentation, though. One little side thing here, when it comes to access points, we do also offer local controllers for managing our access points. So if you want to use a local controller, you want to buy an access point that's Nebula Flex Pro. So even though you aren't using that Nebula Pro license, those hardware are the hardware that have the ability to talk with that local controller. So when it comes to Nebula, the question is, well, how much is it? And the answer is the standard version is free. Um, you can manage an unlimited number of customers and an unlimited number of sites and an unlimited number of hardware through the free version of Nebula. We do offer some optional licenses which unlock additional features, primarily aimed at making it easier to offer MSP type services, proactive responses, things like that. I can't go through the list today. We go through the list in more detail in the dedicated Nebula webinar, or you can just Google Nebula Pro Pack. And it should be, Google should point you at one of our web pages where we've got a chart which shows all the differences between base, plus, and pro. But just to give you some ideas of some of the differences, free version of Nebula, we only store 24 hours worth of logs in the cloud for you. We do have a syslog server support, so we can always export those logs to your own sys server. But if you want us to store them, we just store them for 24 hours. Plus Pack stores logs for a week, and Pro Pack stores logs for a year. Another area where they differ here is when it comes to admin accounts. Base Pack gives you, I believe, 5 admin accounts per customer that you can set up. Plus Pack gives you 8, and Pro Pack gives you an unlimited number of those. We have a cloud-hosted authentication server. So if you want to use that server, the free version of Nebula gives you 100 entries into that free server or into that cloud-hosted server, where Pro Pack gets an unlimited number of those. Pro Pack also gives you things like an audit log, so you can get that lasts for a full year, so you can always go back and find when configurations were changed and by who. Gives you access to push notifications when devices go offline. It gives you access to the ability to push out reports either for yourself or to your customers on a timely basis, and those reports can be branded with your logo, etc. And then the MSP pack, as the name implies, unlocks some additional tools for larger MSPs, such as being able to create admin teams to make it easier to add and remove different admins from different customers, things like that. So we're moving on from Nebula. We're now talking about our wireless access points. So I'm just going to start with some of the cool features that we have that are generally available across all or most models. So to begin with, easy to use wireless mesh. Using wireless mesh can be done with Nebula or with a local area controller. But now that we've got 6 gigahertz wireless networking and tri-radio access points, I think you're going to see mesh becoming more popular as a way to be able to spread and add additional access points to solve coverage issues without needing to run a new Cat 5e or Cat 6 cable to that location. We support dynamic pre-shared key. So traditionally, the way you're supposed to be doing security at a business is you use 802.1x authentication, so WPA2 or 3 enterprise, where each user has their own unique username and password. There may be some certificates involved, and it's a lot more difficult to use and administer than most people would like. So for that reason, a lot of businesses out there aren't using that. Instead, they're just setting up different SSIDs and using pre-shared keys for different groups. So, you know, everybody in accounting has one pre-shared key they all share, etc. There's obviously security issues in that, especially when a customer or when an employee leaves on unhappy terms. So the solution to that is dynamic pre-shared key. It allows you to use one SSID and give each user their own unique pre-shared key. When they connect to that access point, they type it in just like they would the pre-shared key that you would use at your home. And then on the back end, we're able to see who that password belongs to and apply VLAN settings to that user based on that individual user's password. And we also offer, using Nebula with our Pro Pack here, AI and machine learning. Basically, we can monitor your wireless network, and there are certain settings and configurations we can change for you based on what we see as connectivity issues with those clients to try to solve those issues for you. Obviously, there's only so much you can do by tweaking settings, but oftentimes it helps improve the guest experience without needing you to get manually involved with manually changing settings or moving access points around. So all of our access points are designed with this philosophy in mind. Basically, all of our business class pro products are designed with this. So we've got 2 things going on our access points. One is longevity. So all of our true business class access points come with a lifetime warranty. And the reason we can do that is how we design our access points. So to begin with, we do not use electrolytic capacitors. We only use solid state capacitors. So electrolytic capacitors are probably the primary cause of failure on a solid state device, especially one that can get as hot as an access point can. The other common cause of failure with an access point or with just solid state hardware in general is heat fatigue. Heat buildup causing the little switches in your microcontrollers to fail can cause solder joints to get brittle and fail, etc. So to solve that, our access points usually have a large metal heat sink behind the main PCBA. And then we have a lot of vent holes in the back here to help pull that heat out of the housing so it keeps the heat off of the board itself, prolonging the lifespan of our access point. So if you pick up one of our access points and you pick up one of our competitors, even one of our more expensive competitors, you will usually find that our access point is significantly heavier, and that's why. Some of our lower end competitors don't even, not only do they not have a heat sink to pull heat off the board, they don't even have holes in the housing to allow the heat to escape from that. So that's one of the reasons why some of those other vendors only offer a 1 year or 2 year warranty on their access points, even though price wise, they're roughly the same as where we are. So another cool thing we have here on our access points, and also guys, I forgot to mention it at the start. If you do have questions, there's a question and answer or Q&A part of the Zoom interface. Feel free to send them in using that. And depending on the question, I'll either save it for the end or answer it as we go. So when it comes to our access points, we do something that is very different than most of our competition. We offer different antenna configurations that our competition doesn't offer. Most access points have a static antenna system. So most access points, most of your circular or rectangular access points have an omnidirectional antenna built in. That antenna is basically designed with the idea that you're going to mount your access point above the area that needs to be covered and roughly centrally to the area where you need coverage. So the signal gets broadcast out and radiated out in a fixed antenna pattern that's roughly like umbrella shaped, radiating out from that access point, which is great if you're mounting your access point on the ceiling above the area to be covered. But that's not always the case. Oftentimes we end up having to mount our access point onto a wall. So to help solve that issue, we offer what's called dual optimized antennas, where we have two sets of antennas, a ceiling set and a wall set that you can switch between. And then we have our smart antenna technology, which is an adaptive antenna, which is able to basically in real time change the antenna configuration through an array to optimize based on the environmental conditions at that moment. So we'll touch on these really quick here. So again, here's your traditional ceiling mount antenna. When you mount it over on a wall, you end up in a situation where you're ending up sending a lot of your signal up into the ceiling or down into the floor. If you are in a multi-story building, depending on what those floors are made of, it may cause issues with your neighbors upstairs or downstairs, etc. So our solution to this is to add a second set of antennas that are optimized for wall placement and allow you to choose which ones you want to use. You can do that on a per device basis. You can even do it on a per radio basis. So then our smart antenna technology, those of you out there that are familiar with Ruckus, this is very similar to the Ruckus BeamFlex Plus. So if you understand how that works, it's roughly the same idea here. And so again, you're traditionally, you've got just that one antenna pattern. So with smart antenna, you have an array that's capable of hundreds of different antenna patterns. So not just one for ceiling, not two, one for ceiling, one for wall, but hundreds. And what that does for us is it allows us to choose an antenna pattern based on where the client device is in relationship to the access point to focus the beam towards the client device. But our algorithm we use also takes a look at other sources of RF interference and chooses antenna patterns that ignore those sources of RF interference, thus reducing the interference that those cause. So in the case of a situation where that interference is coming from other access points, you end up in a situation where we can have more than 100% airtime utilization because the smart antenna allows multiple devices to use the same spectrum at the same time without interfering with each other. So it's a really cool tech. So now we'll talk about our access point models. We've broken them into three categories here to sort of make it easy to keep track of them. The Simplicity series, these are our Soho access points. These are aimed primarily at that prosumer space, the small office do-it-yourselfer. So those are our NWA 50 and 90 series access points. Those come with a 2-year warranty. And they may be missing some features that you normally would find on our business class access points. So for instance, they may not support um, captive portal for guest access. They may not support um, coordinated roaming between the access points, load balancing, etc. The beginning entry level of our true business class access points here is the NWA 1 series and the NWA 2 series. So these will all come with a lifetime warranty out of the box. And all of these models that I'm talking about today are Nebula Flex or Nebula Flex Pro. And then on the higher end here for the SMB space, we have our W series. So the W series is our more business-oriented products. These will all be Nebula Flex Pro. So these will all work with our local controller, as well as standalone, as well as the cloud. And these usually will have one of our antenna technologies I talked about earlier. So they may have a dual optimized antenna or smart antenna, etc. So we'll go through the models really quickly. I'm not going to go through all the specs because that's going to be really boring. On the very low end, we have the NWA 50AX, and then we have the NWA 50AX Pro. So there has been some confusion with Pro here. This is not a reference to Nebula Pro Pack. It's just a reference to it's a little bit upgraded version of the NWA 50AX. So the NWA 50AX, AX 1800 speeds, the 50AX Pro bumps those speeds up to AX 3000 and gives you a multi-gig uplink port on it. The 90 Pro unlocks some additional features that are not available on the 50AX. And then we have our outdoor AP here, the NWA 55AXE. So this is our inexpensive outdoor AP, really good to use for like bridging buildings together or connecting an outbuilding to a main building type of situation, as well as just outdoor coverage in general. Stepping up from those, we have the NWA 1 and 2 series here. So at the moment, we've just got 2 models that fit this space. Again, both are lifetime warranty. We have the NWA 220AX-6E. So this is a Wi-Fi 6E product that can support broadcasting on 6 gigahertz. And then we have the NWA 130BE. This is a $180 Wi-Fi 7 tri-band tri-radio access point. So this is a fantastic move if your customers are looking at going ahead and upgrading to Wi-Fi 7 today to future-proof their network. This is a very affordable way to do it here for you. Jumping up to the W series here, we'll start with the WAX300H. So this is a Wi-Fi 6 wall plate AP. So it's designed to be used primarily in hospitality spaces, although we aren't forcing you to stick with it. And basically what it provides here for you is a small wall-mounted access point that's got PoE in, and then it's got multiple Ethernet ports coming out, including one which passes through PoE power. So oftentimes these will be used in hospitality situations. They're a little bit less power than your traditional access point. And you'll put one per room or one per every other room. And then you've got the Ethernet out. So you can go from that and plug that into your IPTV set-top box, which runs the TV in the hotel room. You can use the PoE out port to power up and provide VoIP access over a PoE VoIP phone in the room. And all you need to do is run one Cat5e or Cat6 cable to that room to be able to provide that functionality. And then our entry-level W series access point these days is the WAX510D. The D indicates that this has dual optimized antennas. So if you're looking for a cheap AP that's got dual optimized antennas, this is the model to be looking at. Jumping up here to our 6 series, we have the WAX610D. So again, the D means dual optimized antennas. It's basically just a faster version of the 510D. And then we have our 630S. The S implies smart antenna. So this is our entry-level smart antenna access point. It's basically a 610D with a smart antenna on it. And then our flagship Wi-Fi 6 product was the WAX 650S. This one added a dedicated 5G DFS scanning radio and Bluetooth support for Bluetooth BLE applications. And then our dedicated heavy-duty outdoor access point, the WAX655E. And then lastly, these two here, we have the WAX640S-6E. This is our It's our fastest Wi-Fi 6E access point. It's tri-radio with 3 radios providing simultaneous coverage on 2.4, 5, and 6. And then our flagship AP these days now is the WBE 660S. So this is a Wi-Fi 7 access point, providing wireless speeds of up to BE 22,000 or 22 gigabits per second in theory. So just to highlight here, when it comes to outdoor solutions, if you're trying to provide outdoor access, this is a question we get asked a lot. We've got 3 options for you. We've got that low-end dedicated NWA 55AXE. It's good for bridging. It does not have captive portal, so it's not going to be good if you're trying to provide public hotspot access. We have the WAX 655E I talked about before. This is our heavy-duty W series. It's got all the features. It has external antenna connectors, so you need to buy the antennas to go with it. We sell some omnidirectional antennas, but you can source your own directional antennas or whatever you need. And then we also have here an outdoor enclosure that fits most of our indoor access points. So you can move and use an indoor access point outside to provide a cheap, inexpensive outdoor coverage for you. It provides some water protection for the access point and helps extend the heat range that those access points can support. So I want to talk a little bit here really quick about Wi-Fi 7. Again, I do a dedicated webinars on our Wi-Fi 7 devices where we talk a little bit more about it. But basically, the Wi-Fi 7 is the latest standard for Wi-Fi. It's built on top of Wi-Fi 6, took everything that was working there and tweaked it to make it that much faster and better. So in theory, Wi-Fi 7 can support wireless data rates up to 46 gigabits per second with the correct access point and client device. We've increased the QAM encoding to get us a 20% better data increase. We have support for 320 megahertz channels on the 6 gigahertz radio for even faster speeds. And there's a new technology called MLO, which can let client devices connect to multiple radios in your access point at the same time for faster speeds or lower latency. So the main areas where you would see Wi-Fi 7 really having a big play here is high density locations, anywhere you've got a lot of users or you've got a lot of access points crammed into the same space, usually because you've got a lot of users. A lot of the technology that goes into Wi-Fi 7, including the use of 6 gigahertz, helps provide more non-overlapping channels so you can put more users on there. And there are various other tweaks to Wi-Fi 7 that help make it perform better in these high density environments. The other area where I see it making a play is where it comes to doing wireless mesh. So being able to add access points without needing to run Ethernet to them to provide a backhaul. The speeds of 6 gigahertz, the extra bandwidth of 6 gigahertz really makes this something that is finally ready for the enterprise play. Where historically mesh just hasn't worked in business because the quality isn't there. It's okay for home users. It's not okay for businesses. I really think Wi-Fi 7 solves those issues now for us. So that's it as far as access points go. We'll talk now about our switches. So I want to talk about the speeds that you can find when it comes to different cables, because this is something you run into a lot. You want to upgrade your network to multi-gig because you've got new faster access points or whatever the reason happens to be. You've got some heavy-duty NAS systems. So I wanted to just sort of go over here the differences that are available for the different ones. So you can see here with Cat5e cables, you can provide standard 100-meter range for 1 gig, 2.5 gig, and 5 gig connections. In some cases, you may be able to do short distance 10 gig, but just in general, the safe ones for you here are 1 gig, 2.5, and 5 gig. Cat6 cables will provide connectivity at all of the speeds. In the case of 10 gig, up to 55 meters. And then Cat6A cables will provide 10 gig copper speeds up to 100 meters. And all 3 cables can support PoE++. So what is PoE++? So basically, PoE is broken down into 3 different technologies. 802.3AF, 802.3AT, and 802.3BT. So basically, the first one, 802.3.AF, we call PoE. It can provide up to 15.4 watts of DC power over your Ethernet cables. PoE Plus or AT is able to provide up to 30 watts of power per device connected directly to it. And then PoE++ provides 60 watts of power. So PoE++ is usually reserved for newer, faster access points, like the higher end Wi-Fi 7 access points. And also for some of your heavy duty IP cameras, your pan tilt zoom, high resolution cameras need that extra power. Another thing to keep in mind, sometimes on those larger runs, if the quality of the cable is not good, you've got some connection issues, the cables are old, you can have too much power drop. So even though you've got a device that only needs 30 watts of power, you may not actually be able to get 30 watts to the device. So a PoE++ device can provide that little extra power boost when needed. So when it comes to our switches, we have an awful lot of them. If you thought we had a lot of access points, you haven't seen anything yet. So rather than go through all of our switches, I wanted to go over the switch naming because that will help you figure out what you're looking for. Once you know how the naming works, and if you know what you're kind of feature-wise looking for, you can use that to look at the price list and find out which access points may work for you. So basically, any switch that starts with ES is a fast Ethernet switch. All ports support 100 megabits per second. RG are our ruggedized outdoor switches. We've just got one or two models of those right now. And those are all 1 gig and usually have a 1 gig uplink SFP port on them. GS switches is telling you that all of the ports on that switch are gigabit. If it starts with MG, it's telling you that all of the ports support multi-gig, usually 2.5 gig, sometimes a little bit faster. Our XGS switches is telling you that it's GS, so most of the ports are 1 gig, but the X is telling you there are 10 gig uplink ports on the switch. So if you need a switch with 10 gig uplinks and then 1 gig to all the regular ports, this is the guy for you. The XMG is telling you that all of the ports are multi-gig with 10 gig uplinks. So you'll see a lot of switches and say, 8 2.5 gig ports and then 2 10 gig uplink ports. And then XS is telling you all of the ports support 10 gigabits. When you look at the model number, you will see they often end in letters. So if it ends in HP, that's telling you it provides PoE power with a power budget up to 375 watts, variable by model. EP are our PoE plus access points here. They provide a lower overall power budget for the switch. So you lower the cost on the switch by reducing the PoE power budget to no more than 180 watts. And then our FP series PoE switches are our super heavy duty PoE. So they'll usually provide PoE plus power on all of the ports. So up to 960 watts of total budget on one switch. And then if it ends in the letter F, it's a fiber switch. All ports are fiber only. So when you look at our switches, one thing you will find is oftentimes our uplink ports are what we call dual mode ports. So you have two, we'll say here, we'll just look at this little square here. You have two physical SFP ports, and you have normally two also copper ports. And the idea behind that is you don't have 4 ports there, you have 2 ports, and you have the choice for either port to use it as copper or to use an SFP fiber for it. So it's one port with 2 different interfaces, and you can only use one of those interfaces at a time. And just to hit here, we do offer accessories for our switches. Specifically, we offer SFP and SFP Plus modules. And for those switches that support direct stacking, we also sell stacking cables as well. So when you're using our switches with Nebula, some of the cool features we have here for you is we have the ability to basically take a vendor-based OUI. So the first, I forget how many digits, maybe 6 digits of the MAC address. And basically any device that's plugged into the switch, if it matches that vendor's MAC filter list there, it will automatically put that device on a dedicated VLAN that you want for those. So instead of having to do it port-based or manually do it for every device, we can automatically set up those VLAN rules for you based on the MAC. We have the ability there to monitor the PoE devices and automatically free up unused power budget to be used by other devices, so you can fit more PoE devices within the same power budget on your switch. We have the ability to do monitor your IPTV streams and provide reports letting you know of issues that we've seen and our suggestions on how to fix it, etc. So using Nebula here, um, we have the ability to see all of the ports on your switch. And based on the color code and the icons there, we can tell what speed the connection is, whether or not PoE power is currently being provided on those ports. We have the ability to virtually stack our switches so you can configure ports across multiple switches simultaneously. Real-time PoE and data utilization reports for you. So when it comes to the different switch models, we do similar to how we did it on the access points. We broke it into the three categories here: simplicity, flexibility, and ultimate. Now, a key thing with this is these are our Nebula compatible switches. We also have a bunch of desktop switches, um, Smart Plus managed switches, um, desktop switches, all of that also, which are not in today's presentation. So if you're looking for just a little dumb switch, if you're looking for an inexpensive PoE, which is basic features, we do have those as well in some of our other product lines. But today we're just going to focus on these models here. These are our best sellers generally into the VAR space. So at the beginning here, we have our Simplicity series, the 1915s. So these will be, you'll see like GS 1950 port number. And these are our entry-level Nebula manageable switches. So inexpensive cloud managed switches for you. Jumping up to the flexibility line, we have our 1350, 1920, and 1930 series switches. So these are your full sort of layer 2 plus switches. And then we have the 2220 and 3800 series here, and their ultimate. So these here are the primary thing that the 2220 adds over, say, the 1920 or 1930 is the ability to be managed directly using a CLI. The 1915s, 1920s, 1930s do not support CLI management. In addition to our switches, we do provide PoE power injectors. So these have become really popular with some of the new, higher end access points requiring 60 watts of power. You want to add a few Wi-Fi 7 access points. You don't want to replace your switches. You can just buy PoE power injectors to be able to power those up. Our PoE 12-30W, that guy there provides a multi-gig 2.5 gig uplink and can provide 30 watts of power to a connected device. And then we have our PoE 12-60W. So this is PoE++. It can power anything basically that supports PoE, and it has 5 gig Ethernet ports on it for the uplink. And we'll just sort of briefly go through some of the more popular families here. So I'm going to talk about the GS 1950s because these guys are new. So again, these are our now entry-level cloud-managed layer 2 type switches for you to use. The GS series, all of the ports are 1 gigabit, and depending on the model, we provide up to 130 watts of PoE power. We are also in the process of launching the XMG 1950 series. So the X is telling us there are 10 gig uplinks on those, and MG is telling us that the rest of the ports are at least multi-gig. So if you're looking for an inexpensive cloud managed solution to upgrade your network to faster multi-gig speeds, XMG 1950 series is worth looking at. We have our 1350 series switches, which are kind of weird because the model naming doesn't mesh with all the other models. And that's because these are a series of purpose-built switches that were aimed at the those of you doing IPTV camera installs. So we've added features to this which are popular in that space, although maybe some of these features you could use yourselves for other applications. But some of the extra features it offers is it can provide data and PoE up to 250 meters instead of the standard 100 meters. It can provide continuous PoE, so if you need to reboot the switch or the switch reboots itself, it will not stop providing PoE power to the connected devices, so the connected devices don't have to reboot. And it does have the ability to monitor connected devices. And if it determines that connected device has become unresponsive, we can automatically power cycle that device to reboot it back up. And then I want to talk about our XMG 1930 series switches. So this is probably our most popular series for getting into multi-gig and providing higher PoE power outputs. for Wi-Fi 7 access points, for instance. That's our XMG 1930 series. So this is our true layer 2 plus, and we do sell a license which turns this into a layer 3 switch. So it's a nice handy thing to have there. So that's it for switches. Again, if you have questions, use the question and answer part of the Zoom interface to send those in. We'll talk about our security products. So we'll mostly be talking about our security hardware, our firewalls, or our security appliance, or gateways, whichever term you prefer to use for them. But we will also talk a little bit about some other stuff as well. So just to begin with, when it comes to our security hardware, rather than try to provide the UTM services, those extra security services, ourselves internally, we partner with various vendors to provide that for us. So we're a hardware and software guy. We team up with the experts in the various different niches here to help provide us on the services that we offer. Where a lot of our competition tries to do it all in-house, and let's be honest, not everybody can be an expert on everything. So some of the companies that we partner up here with is Norton, Trellix for web filtering, for IDP and IPS, Athena Cloud. When it comes to antivirus and anti-malware, we've got Bitdefender for email security, Siren, cloud services are hosted on Amazon Web, Akamai for device authentication, WebRoot for IP reputation filters, et cetera, et cetera. So our security hardware has been certified by ICSA Labs for 22 years straight. So ICSA Labs is an independent third party that provides testing and certification of security appliances. So some of the features that you will find offered on most of our security appliances: content filtering, secure Wi-Fi, connect and protect, which is an access point functionality, and then gold security. So we'll talk a little bit about these as we go through here, but one of the key things here is if you have one of our devices that's compatible, you do get a 30-day free trial of all of these services. You can always test it out before you buy a license. So some of the cool stuff we do. So one of the new things that are somewhat new has been what in the industry had previously been called advanced threat protection. So we used to have two sets of products. We had our USG Flex and we had our ATP series. And the ATP provided advanced threat management. The USG Flex provided standard UTM. You can now buy a gold license for your USG Flex to give it that ATP services. So we're in the process of phasing out the ATP models and just making it a license basis using the USG Flex hardware. So one of those things is that advanced threat protection. And what this uses is it uses sandboxing and artificial intelligence to detect zero-day exploits, classify them, and share those classifications with all other ATP type products. So it provides much faster recognition of new threats found on the internet. We offer what's called secure Wi-Fi. So this is a joint feature between our USG Flex series security hardware and our access points. Basically, any of the W series access points are compatible with this feature. And basically, it turns your access point into a cloud-managed UTM appliance, or not UTM, VPN appliance. So instead of, having to configure VPN software in each client device that needs to connect back to the office, or instead of providing a dedicated router, which maybe they can't replace their existing router, you end up double natted and having issues, etc. With this, you provide your employee one of these managed access points, and it broadcasts a special SSID. So any device that can connect to that SSID gets essentially connected via VPN back to the main security gateway for access to corporate resources. Now, obviously, you don't want the kids getting onto that SSID. So in addition to using requiring a username and password to connect to the SSID, you can also add on top of that two-factor authentication to make sure only authorized devices and users are connecting to that remote access point. But because it's a remote access point, you just plug it into your existing router. There's no NAT issues and double NAT issues, things like that. So our security products, we have a dedicated service called SecuReporter. which provides all sorts of detailed reporting and analysis of what's going on your customers' networks. So it's a really good idea to set that up to automatically send reports to your customers so you can show them what those UTM services they're paying for are doing for them. So that's something that we have. It integrates with Nebula, and we make it really easy to jump between that and Nebula if you are using Nebula to manage your security gateways. We also support some security features. One is called Connect and Protect or Connect and Protect Plus, and it allows you to add UTM Lite services to an access point. So maybe you've got a customer, they've got a router that came from their ISP, they don't want to replace it, you don't have the ability or it doesn't support UTM services. You can add UTM services to specific APs or specific SSIDs through our access points using that Connect and Protect license. We also have collaborative detection and response, which basically allows all devices in all the Nebula devices basically to work with each other to handle both threats coming in from outside as well as threats from inside. And Nebula also makes it really easy for you to set up multi-site VPNs, use scripts to automatically configure client devices, etc. So when it comes to the actual hardware itself, again, we've got basically a couple different series here for you. We've got the Effortless series. So this is for our SCR50 and our USG Lite series. So these are security hardware that's based more on your consumer networking type hardware. So it's a little bit less heavy duty, but it does provide UTM Lite services without a license. And they're cloud managed. So it's very popular. Again, a lot of interest from MSPs as a way to deploy basically cloud managed CPE to their customers. We have the USG Flex, which is our more traditional low-end firewall appliance. And then we have just our standard USG Flex series. So this has traditionally been our UTM VPN appliance. With a license, we can convert these over to a SD-WAN product. And then now with the gold license, we can convert these into an ATP product. So historically, we've had the ATP series over here on Ultimate. So those are being phased out, and we'll just transfer over to the USG Flex and the USG Flex H series. Now, the USG Flex H series is a new product line for us. It's basically a complete reworking of the original USG Flex. It's designed to be significantly faster than the USG Flex series to try to keep up with today's faster ISP networks. So at the moment, though, not all of the features that you find in the USG Flex are available on the USG Flex H series, but they are coming, and by the end of this year, we should have parity between the two as far as the services offered. And that's just because, again, the USG Flex H series is basically a complete ground up rework of the USG Flex platform, including all new software. So it's just taken a while for all of those features that have been developed over the years for the regular Flex to get ported over to the Flex H. So now I'll talk briefly here. This is our SCR50. And this, again, it's just a small, lightweight security gateway router aimed at the home user or that small office space. It's got a built-in 6E access point, supports auto VPN to connect back to a central office. So it's been proving to be really popular for those of you looking to provide VPN connections for remote workers, and for those of you that are doing MSP type services and want to provide a cloud managed affordable CPE device. Then we have that standard USG Flex series here, our traditional UTM products, which again can now be upgraded to offer all the same ATP features that ATP is traditionally offered, as the ATP series itself is in the process of being phased out. And then the H series here is going to be our new, faster, high performance line of UTM products. And again, feature wise, they're still playing to catch up until probably later this year. And is showing some of the speeds here. So you can see here on SPI firewall speeds, our USG Flex 700H can provide up to 15 gigabits of throughput through that firewall for you. And with that, guys, that ends today's presentation. I know I went through it really fast. I know I covered a lot of stuff. So if you have questions, send those in. Hopefully there was something there that was new for you, some new products you weren't familiar with, something like that that'll help you out. I do hope to see you here at one of our future webinars. Just so you guys know, most of our webinars are recorded and we do upload them to YouTube. Because Zyxel is a global company, there's a bunch of different global Zyxel channels on YouTube. So for North America, we are called Zyxel America channel. So today's webinar will be uploaded there. Any other webinars you may have missed will be up there. It's also where video case studies, commercials, etc. Best practices videos get uploaded there as well. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions that have come in. So I am going to go ahead and end today's webinar. If you do have questions, you can reach out to your salesperson, Jacob, Andy, or David, and they can get you those answers, or you can email me directly. I am Sean R at Zyxel.com. So Sean is spelled SHAWN, then the letter R at Zyxel.com. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you at a future webinar.